Okay guys, in this video we are going to fetch data using HTTP. Now whenever we work with HTTP, the first thing we need to do is import the HTTP module in a root module. So over here in app.module.ts under browser module, I'm going to import the HTTP module, and this we're going to import from Angular/HTTP package. And then I'm also going to include it in the imports array so that HTTP module is available within our application. Now by importing the HTTP module, we are also registering the HTTP service with Angular's injector. So there is no need to explicitly register the HTTP service like we did with employee service. HTTP module will do that for us. And now to use HTTP in our employee service class, we declare it as a dependency in the constructor. So over here in employee service, I'm going to add a constructor, and this constructor we're going to inject the dependency. So private_HTTP, and this is of type HTTP. And then I also need to import HTTP to get rid of that squiggly. So HTTP, and we inject this from Angular/core. Sorry, I need to from Angular/HTTP. So now we have a local variable HTTP that we can use to refer to an instance of HTTP. Alright, so now we are ready to fetch data using HTTP. So let's have a look at the steps we had listed down in the previous video. Now the first step is to make the HTTP GET call from employee service. So we don't need this hard-coded data anymore. Instead, we are going to use the GET method on HTTP. So this dot_HTTP, so this refers to an instance of HTTP. We're going to invoke the GET method. And this GET method takes in a URL as its argument. Now we all are still beginners learning the concepts of Angular. So let's not take the trouble of creating a web server and then configuring it just to serve up 4 lines of data. So for our application, we will fetch the data from a file that, let's say, we assume to be on a server. So I have created a folder called API data, and within the folder, I have a file name employeedata.json. Now this contains the required data for our application. So we are going to be serving the data from this file instead of the server. So we're back over here in employee service. I'm going to create a new variable. So private_URL. This is going to be of type string, and this contains the URL where the GET request is made. So API data is the name of the folder, and the file name is employeedata.json. So over here, I'm going to pass this dot_URL. So now we are making a GET request to this particular URL. And in the future, if you do have a working server, just replace this URL to point to that server. Everything is going to work as it is. So that is our first step. And for our second step, we need to receive the observable and then map it to JSON. So back here, every observable is going to have some operators that we can use. So once this GET method returns an observable, I'm going to call .map. So map is an operator, and this takes in an arrow function as its argument. And I'm going to explain in just a bit what this does. So response, and then it is going to give us response.json. And then I need to import response from HTTP, and also I need to import the map operator. So from RxJS, add operator map. So basically what we are doing is I have received the observable and I need to convert it into JSON format. So what is the observable that we receive? It is nothing but the response object. So I'm creating a local variable, or I'm referring to this response using a smaller or lowercase response, and I'm just converting that into JSON format. So the left hand side is kind of the input response, and the right hand side is the output response.json. So we have a JSON formatted file now. So now let's save this, and for our third step we need to subscribe to the observable. And our fourth step is to assign the data to a local variable in the view. So let's do both these steps together. Back here in employee list component, now this .employee is our local variable, but we cannot directly assign the getEmployees method. The getEmployees method is going to, alright, let me just clear it and then we can start over. So this dot underscore employee service, so this is the instance of employee service we have. We can call getEmployees method. Now we need to subscribe to this employee, the observable, otherwise we are not going to receive the data in our component. Now the subscribe method is going to take in an arrow function as its argument again, and this is going to be res, which stands for response, employee data, and this we are going to say this dot employees, which is the array we have, is equal to response employee data. So let me explain what is happening here. So we have an instance of employee service, and with that we are going to call the getEmployees method. Now this getEmployees method, if you have a look, is going to return an observable. Now observables don't send data unless you subscribe to them. So our employee service will not send data to employee list component unless we subscribe to them. So on this observable, I'm going to call the subscribe method. Now the subscribe method takes in an arrow function as its argument. Now as the input, it is going to take response employee data, and then on the output side or on the right hand side, we are going to assign that to the employees array that we have over here. And this employees array is what we have in our view. We iterate through the different employees and print just the name. So the first argument to subscribe method is the data that we receive. So now we can do the same thing in our employee details component. So I'm going to copy this. Let's go over here and replace it. So now I'm going to save this. I'm going to save everything. Let's go back to here and save this. And let's see if our application works. And there you go. Now I did add an extra employee just to make sure that we are in fact serving the data from the file. And there you go. We just had 4 employees before. Now we have a 5th employee, Felicia, that is also being displayed. So just to summarize, so that observables is imprinted on your mind, here's what we did. The first step in app.module.ts, we include HTTP module. And then in employee service TS, we inject HTTP as a dependency. So we can now have an instance of HTTP, and we refer to that using _HTTP. And then we invoke the get method, passing the URL where the request has to be made. And this URL is nothing but the file over here, employeedata.json. Now when we make an HTTP call, we get an observable, but that is not the desired format. We need the JSON format. So we can use the map operator on an observable to convert the response into its JSON format. Now from our service, we are returning an observable in the JSON format. But the observable doesn't send out data unless someone subscribes to it. So in our employee list component, we make sure that we subscribe to this observable returned by the getEmployees method. Now when we subscribe to an observable, as its first argument, we get the data that is returned as a response. So this response employee data is nothing but the observable values in the JSON format. And with that value, we are going to assign it to our local variable employees. And this employees is used in the view to list out the employee names. And the same thing with employee details. So there you go. That's how we fetch data using HTTP. So alright, thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.